How's everybody doing? Okay, still asleep. So let's try this again. How's everybody doing? All right. So it looks like we're starting to dwindle down, but I hope to help you in learning and continuous. I guess continuous learning would probably be the best way to say this. How many people here have heard of Kaizen or Kaizen in general? Good, a few. So the funny thing is I talked to a friend of mine and I told him about this talk and he's like, why does anybody want to know about manufacturing? So this is my hope, is to really get people to understand what it really is and how it can work for you. So I hope you guys enjoy it. So my name is Clayton. I am an iOS developer. I primarily work on sports apps. I get to work with NFL teams, NBA teams, and we build basically watch apps, iPhone apps for these teams, basically news related. So it's fun to be able to get paid to really watch sports. UFC was a client of ours, and for a period of time during their app, we'd have to watch a UFC match and make sure our app was working. And sometimes I still watch a UFC match to make sure our app is working, just because it's fun. I mean, I love sports. I've been involved in sports since I was a kid, so integrating sports and dev makes life kind of a dream for me, at least. Some of you may not know about sports or don't care about sports, but for me, this is a great way for me to learn. So as you can see, never stop learning, because life never stops teaching. And that's something that I've always really tried to do, is learn. I'm self-taught. I didn't go to school. I didn't get a degree in computer science. So for me, the struggle, as they say, the struggle is real. What was real back then, trying to learn Objective-C on your own, it's hard to even learn it now, but when I was learning it, there was really not a whole lot of YouTube videos or books, and it's just a really difficult language to learn. So if you know Objective-C, you'll know what I mean. If you're just going into Swift, be thankful that you don't have to actually learn it. So let's figure out in the room, how many people in here have had a New Year's resolution? Anything? Raise your hand. No, that's it? Half of you? Really? Wow. Okay. So let's see the next thing. How many of you that just raised your hand are still on your New Year's resolution and doing good with it? Half of you. Okay, good. That's really what I wanted. All right. So for those of you that didn't, that are still not on theirs, don't feel bad. I actually started a New Year's resolution this year for 2017, and I sort of kind of failed, and then I kind of kept it going by changing it up a little bit. But it's something that is difficult for most people to really do. The average American makes the same resolution 10 years in a row without success. So this isn't something that is, it's common. Within 4 months, 25% of the resolutions are abandoned. Those who succeed in keeping their resolutions usually do so only after 5 or 6 annual broken promises. So New Year's resolutions are kind of a thing you're going to keep doing constantly over and over again. And a lot of that is a lot of the reasons for that you'll see in my talk. So some of the key things that we will discuss today is self-improvement, and it doesn't necessarily mean self-improvement for development only, but self-improvement in anything that you want to do. There's this rule called the 5-hour rule. How many of people have heard the 5-hour rule? Only one. Good. And then the Kaizen, which is basically what I will discuss. The 5-hour rule was actually part of my New Year's resolution, and it kind of dwindled out into the ether. So, with how we would learn and do things, I was like, 5 hours. Oh, 5 hours in a week of just taking my time to learn something, I figured would be nothing. Like, I can give up 5 hours. But it's actually harder than it seems, because it really does, it changes the way you do things. So I think this is kind of why Kaizen really speaks to me and why it can speak to you as well. So as I said earlier, I'm self-taught. And my first programming language was ActionScript. For those of you who know ActionScript, I absolutely love ActionScript 3. I did not like programming when I started. I hated it. I stayed away from AS2. I started talking to friends and learning, trying to get into AS3, and then one day it just clicked and I loved it. And from that point, I learned a lot. But one of the things that I took from it was I used to actually take notes on regular paper, put them in sheet protectors, then put it in a binder, then had like tabs, and anytime that I wanted to learn something, I could open the book. Why did I do this? One, because copying and pasting doesn't teach you anything. So when I used a binder, it forced me to keep writing it. Within the third or fourth time of me writing something, I didn't need it anymore. But it was, I got to read it, I got to write it, and then I got to type it. And then I started learning. So I've always kept that. I tried it in Objective-C, but it was harder because as tech gets more into your life, it's harder to do. Learning in general is hard to do when you have a full-time job, and it's especially hard when it's your full-time. Like currently I'm an iOS developer. To learn new things is hard to do. And if you're new at programming, it's also hard to do because you're trying to get in. So we'll go over some things that we can do. So when in 2015, Apple announced the Apple Pencil and the iPad Pro. And as soon as I saw the talk and as soon as it was announced, I was like, that is what I'm going to use to take notes. So this is what an example of my note-taking currently in the iPad. Yes, it's different. I'm using I guess it's Stanford note-taking style, but to me it's easier because on the left side I can say what exactly I want to do or what I'm doing, and on the right side I can write code. And it works really well for me because I can just skim through my notes on the left, find what I need, and then see the code to the right. And this has really helped me, but again, introducing something new that you're not typically used to doing makes you slowly but surely get away from it. So the things that I use notes for are blogs, Christina Tai, we have Natasha the Robot, Paul Hudson's websites. I will go to websites, blogs, videos, Stack Overflow. If I see something that is interesting, I write it here because bookmarking, I will never remember to go look through my bookmarks. It's kind of just like bookmark, yeah, I'm nice, but it's going to just die in the ether of bookmarks. So this way, I have a central place for me to find my notes or find things that I want. So that's pretty much the usage of my iPad Pro, that and Netflix, but primarily notes, all right? So as I started writing this book, I got back into note-taking again because I wanted to teach Swift. When you're a developer, you don't know every nuance of every single thing. So teaching certain things about arrays and about sets was really difficult. So I had to go back and relearn things. So what I did was I actually took tons of notes in the iPad, and I just wrote everything that I could find, and now I have a central location for it to be. And it was because of this book, but as I was doing it, I told myself that at the beginning of the year, I'm gonna get back to doing it. Again, back to my resolution. So as I was skimming through my timeline when the book was complete, as I'm sharp, I hope I'm saying it right, posted a tweet that looked like this. The 5-hour rule from Inc. And so I started looking into the 5-hour rule. And the 5-hour rule basically talks about business entrepreneurs like Oprah, the guy from Microsoft that's totally slipping my mind right now, Mark Cuban. All of these have some kind of 5-hour rule. Some of them read for 5 hours. Some of them read a book in a week. Some of them they all did something different, but they did learning continuously as being business CEOs. So for me, I was like, okay, well, if they can do it, then I should be doing something. And I like to read. But again, you get caught up in what you do and you don't always put the effort into doing it. So I got into the 5-hour. I got probably into my first book, which was Pragmatic Programmers. Anybody read Pragmatic Programmers in this room at all? Cool. And those that just raised your hand, they actually talk about Kaizen in the book. You may not have caught it, but they even give the broken window example is a Kaizen actual example of real world. So you already actually know it, you just don't realize it, which I found fascinating as I was reading it. So each of these top business leaders incorporated some kind of learning, something into their everyday life that I really wanted to do for myself. So, as I said, the Pragmatic Programmers book had the term in there, and so being that the person that I am, I saw this in the book, and I decided, okay, let me go see what Kaizen is. So I do some research, and it's just continuous, small steps of continuous improvement. So I go on Amazon and waste my money once again on some other book I don't read. So I buy the book, I throw it, it comes to my house, I throw it in my bookshelf, and I go about my business. And as I'm starting to kind of get out of my resolution, something says read the book. And so I read the book called One Small Step Can Change Your Life. And so it's a really, really short book. If you hate reading, it has an audiobook, and the audiobook actually even has more stuff with interviews. But this actually did change the way I thought of things, because it basically said you can do things in small steps that don't disrupt your current life. So when I tried 5-hour, I was trying to just do 5 hours in a week, and that isn't going to work. And so my brain is going to be like, nah, not doing this. And no matter how much I want to do it, this was basically telling me my brain isn't going to let me. So it basically is a way to trick your mind into learning something. So here, it's a journey of 1,000 miles must begin with their first step. And so the name Kaizen actually was developed, but the name of it was done in Japan. But the guy who created the actual process was an American. In France fell to Nazi Germany in the 40s, American leaders realized how urgently the Allies needed shipments of military equipment. They were also forced to acknowledge that American soldiers might soon be sent abroad as well. So what they did was they found a way to talk to the people who built these ships and anything else they needed. They asked them specifically, what can we do to improve our process? And so they got all of these things, but they wanted improvements on things that didn't actually involve you like changing anything drastically that they did. So they got all of these different small things, and they were able to drastically improve their improvement on getting out shipments. So the Japanese adopted this plan, which some of you may know was adopted by Toyota. And Toyota took this whole idea and made it into theirs. And so they brought in the guy who created Kaizen, or the continuous improvement, and they were able to just talk to the people who actually worked on things. And so if you want to know more about the manufacturing side of this, there's tons of books on this actual story. I'm not going to get into it, but I want to go into the more what's relevant as far as what we can use with it. So once again, Kaizen is small steps of disarming the brain's fear response. It stimulates rational thought and creative play. So what we're doing is we're basically trying to make really, really tiny steps into getting into what we want to do. So here, Kai stands for change and Zen stands for better, which is continuous improvement. It's common to think bigger. We always want to think bigger. We want something drastic. I need to change this. Perfect example, cleaning the house. Cleaning the house may seem like it's a big task if you're not a person who likes to clean. But if you say, I'll take 5 minutes of my time, put on a timer, and clean something, and when the timer stops, I stop, that's not so big. That's 5 minutes. And most of the time, what you'll do is you'll end up cleaning a little longer, or you'll do something a little longer. And you continuously do that, you can increase the time, and then eventually you're constantly cleaning. You become somebody who cleans. But if you try to tell someone to clean for an hour, they're not going to clean if they don't like cleaning. So how can we do this in programming? So let's say you want to write cleaner code. How do you actually approach that? Say you want to learn all the design patterns of a certain language. How do you do that? Just thinking about the number of design patterns there are, how do you incorporate that into your life? Or how do you say you want to read a book once a week? You can't just automatically start reading a book once a week. You have to progressively get to that point. So before I break down programming stuff, let's look at some real-world examples. So in New York in 1990, a guy brought Kaizen into the subways. They were having a really bad issue with crime in the subways. So what they wanted to focus on was the crimes included urinating in public, vagrancy, and turnstile jumping. And so what he decided to do was, let's target just this. Let's target turnstile jumping. Why? Because it's a small thing that can improve the actual subway system. So what they found was the officers would arrest the turnstile jumpers, and they would stand them next to each other or in the area in which other people would go into the subway systems and see this happening. And what would happen is other people would then realize what's happening. They would see that they're now starting to go after us, or like people who are not criminals per se. It made a dramatic effect not on just small crimes, but on major ones, because when they ran background criminal reports on the people they arrested, they found out that these were petty thieves or other people who were actually doing these crimes. So what it basically did was it dropped the crime rate drastically because they did this one simple thing that in New York, if they would have announced, oh, we're going to start doing this in turnstiles, the New Yorkers would have been like, this isn't going to work, and why are you doing this? We need drastic change. We need more police on the streets, or we need something big. They did both. They did big things and they did small, but they used a Kaizen process to actually eliminate or drop the crime rate in New York by doing continuous improvement. So it's not just a development thing or a manufacturing thing. So now I'm hoping at this point you're giving me the look of like, okay, so what's your point? So what's the trivial steps you can do right now to improve quality of your code? Think about that in your head. What can I do in my code that would improve something? It probably first thing is going to be something big, but take something smaller. So one small step I took was using the mark comment. So I said to myself, I'm going to use the mark comment every time I write code. Small. Doesn't affect you, doesn't affect anything you do throughout the day. It just allows me to make my code a little bit better, more readable, and I just did this. That's all. Another thing you can do is you can take this and go even further with more things. But I'm going to go back to the design pattern idea and show you how you can go to the point of learning design patterns. So the first thing that you do is take a small step. So do people know how many design patterns there are? Off the top of your head. Say it. Good number. So that would be my first step into learning design patterns. And you probably right now like, Lord have mercy, I watched all this just to get to this point. The point of it is not for you to do anything drastically in your life. This is simple. It's not going to change you. It's not going to hurt you. And the next time somebody asks you how many design patterns, you're going to know it. Next step I would take. Name all the different types of design patterns. How many people know all of the different design pattern types? Again, there's only three: creational, behavioral, and structural. Again, I've been using this and I haven't done anything. This is exactly what I did. I got an app, and then 3 times a day, it asks me, name 3 types of design patterns. Again, I am not disturbing my life. I look at my phone, I say it out loud, I go back to doing what I'm doing. So now I've learned the next step in the process of continuously improving myself. So how do I take, and this again shows me 3 times a day doing it. So the next step, define each category in your own words. Again, small steps. Name each creational pattern, okay? Name each behavioral pattern. I still haven't done any code, but I'm learning, and I'm still learning each pattern. And I can take this to any programming language at any point in time. Structural. Define each creational pattern. Define each behavioral and structural, and continuing on and on. And you can do as much as you want. If you're doing too much, then you just ramp it back down and go back to a smaller thing that doesn't interrupt your life, or you can do more. But the point is basically for you to just introduce small things so that maybe in like 3 months, you can actually write every single design pattern, know how each one works, so that when a situation comes at work that you want to do something, you can go, hey, let's try this design pattern and see if this will work, because you actually know it, you can write it, and you've done it within your time frame of whatever. There's no pressure. There's nothing that you can learn. You can take this as a beginner developer, can start learning storyboards by just giving them, put a label on the screen, put your name in it, run the project. That's all you do for that day. The next day, you write a little bit more code and step them through the process. Maybe they're really, really scared or intimidated. This is a really gradual way to get people. Eventually, they're going to enjoy it and do more than 5 minutes. And that's the point of what Kaizen is trying to get at. So as you plan your own steps towards change, keep in mind that sometimes despite your best planning, you'll hit a wall of resistance. You don't give up. Instead, you just scale back at what you're doing. You don't want to ever stop. Remember that the goal is to bypass the fear and to make the steps small that you can barely notice an effort. So as long as you are doing your continuous improvement and you're not doing something that's going to make you not want to do it, you keep doing it. All right, when the steps are easy enough, the mind will usually take over and leapfrog over obstacles to achieve your goal. Instead of aggressively forcing yourself into a boot camp mentality about change, give your mind permission to make the leaps on its own schedule and its own time. Try to see Kaizen as a process that is never done. Don't put it in a drawer forgotten once your goal has been reached, something you continuously do. The 2 book recommendations I would recommend are Pragmatic Programmer and One Small Step Can Change Your Life. Again, the One Small Step Can Change Your Life is a simple, easy book. I literally did it in a day, and I did it in Kaizen way. I did 1 chapter, and then I went and did something else. Then I came back, and I did another chapter, and then I got really into it. So then I started just going chapter after chapter after chapter. But it's a really, really, really good book. I can't stress that enough. So some of the key points that I wanted to bring up before I close is small steps of Kaizen disarms the brain's fear response, stimulating rational thought and creative play. Remember that your goal is to bypass the fear and to make the steps so small that they can barely notice an effort. And try to see Kaizen as a process that is never done. Don't put it in a drawer, forgotten once your goal has been reached. And the final one is Kaizen can be used in anything in life. It doesn't matter what it is. It's not just programming. It's not manufacturing. It's whatever you want to do. Everyone wants to improve. It's an innate thing that we all have. You want to improve at something. It could be programming. It could be something else. It could be your marriage. Whatever the case may be, small steps will help you improve that. So it's something you can easily incorporate. All right. Thank you again. And my name is Craig. You can follow me on the DevMe on Twitter.